It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A terse response from China and measured congratulations from the UK and others after elections keep Taiwan's pro-autonomy party in power. President Biden reveals he sent a private message to Iran after more US strikes against Houthi rebels who Tehran supports in Yemen. Only a handful of arrests as tens of thousands turn out in London for the first major protest this year, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Anger over post office executive bonuses as a former sub-postmaster recounts the humiliation of being caught up in the Horizon scandal.
Handcuff, what? March me out of my own post office in front of these people, making me look like a criminal and a thief.
The West Midlands finds itself at the centre of a surge in measles infections in England and Wales, fuelled by vaccine hesitancy. Also tonight, slipping away painlessly, new details are revealed about Queen Elizabeth's final moments and how Charles found out he'd become king. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. It was the first major vote of what will be a record number of elections worldwide this year, and it's potentially one of the most consequential. Taiwan has given a third term in power to the Democratic Progressive Party, which champions autonomy from China. There were measured messages of congratulations from the UK, the US, and others, while Beijing, which claims Taiwan is its territory, said that reunification is inevitable. Well, let's look at those results. Well, the new president, Lai Ching-te, and his Democratic Progressive Party secured 40% of the vote. Hu Wu-he from the Nationalist Party, which favors closer ties with China, came second. And in third place, the new Taiwan People's Party, which focused its campaign away from tensions with China, instead pushing domestic issues. From Taipei, our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith, reports.
Election night in Taipei, and for the winning side, an outpouring of elation. A victory party, a projection too, about how they see themselves and their nation. It was in the end a comfortable victory for this man, Lai Ching-te. His promise, a tough approach towards China. It was a pitch that resonated here with a people who are proud of their politics. Their message, a clear one, that they wanted their neighbour to hear.
Our democracy is winning again, so I think that's the message we want to send to the whole world and send to China. We are a country and we are Taiwan.
Democracy is everything to us. It cannot be taken away by a pro-communist regime. We are the masters of our own country. This is crucial.
China sees these people as Chinese, this island as a breakaway province. The result, a clear sign they do not agree.
This is the first time in the history of Taiwan's democracy that a single party has won a third term in office. And it's happened to this party, the one that has consistently taken the strongest stance on China. It says something interesting about the people here and the way they feel about their democracy.
Vice President Lai Ching-te and Xiao Mei-qing.
But Lai will be a provoking choice with his history of pro-independence statements. He knows Taiwan is in a precarious position. Just listen to his pitch to international friends.
We are telling the international community that between democracy and authoritarianism, we will stand on the side of democracy. Taiwan will continue to walk side by side with democracies from around the world.
For the losing party, the empty seats said it all. The opposition KMT had wanted to talk more to China. A vision, for now, sent packing.
I regret that I could not complete the political reshuffle. I let everyone down. I am here to express my sincerest apologies. I'm sorry.
And there was heartbreak too for the many young people who voted for the new third party. Their focus on domestic themes may well have split the vote and helped Lai Ching-te to victory. It's unclear how China will respond. For now, a short state TV message. Reunification is inevitable, he says. Multiple efforts, from military threats to online meddling, were used to influence people here. It doesn't seem to have worked. Taiwan's democracy is flourishing. Defending it, a clear and consistent motivation. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News in Taipei.
President Joe Biden has revealed that he sent a private message to Iran about the Houthi rebels it supports in Yemen. Biden didn't elaborate about the messages after U.S. forces targeted the Houthis with another strike last night. Now, they vowed to retaliate, risking a wider Middle East conflict as the war in Gaza nears 100 days. Tonight, Israeli forces are reported to be closing in on a vital trauma hospital in the center of the enclave, which is running dangerously low on fuel. A warning: this report from our international correspondent John Sparks includes pictures of injured people.
As the fighting expands into central Gaza, the war is closing in on the district's biggest health centre, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. It's the only one left. The others in this area have shut, and our team saw a familiar procession make its way through the front door. Blood-soaked parents and their traumatised children seeking assistance in its overcrowded emergency room. But there are too many patients and not enough staff. Most medics at Al-Aqsa have fled because the war is being fought at the hospital's gates.
The circumstances are very difficult. The staff are exhausted and under huge mental strain. At first, it wasn't clear to us whether the hospital itself was being targeted or whether places close to the hospital were being shot at.
A few hours after our team filmed these images, the diesel generators at Al-Aqsa ran out of fuel, and the staff were forced to treat their patients in the dark. Solar batteries were used to power a number of ventilators and incubators. The hospital's 2 remaining doctors are now desperate for a fuel delivery, with 600 to 700 people seeking treatment every day.
There's a lot of people in here. In a couple of hours, if the electricity doesn't come back, these people will die.
Round the back, thousands of people have erected rough and ready shelters by the hospital wall in the hope it would offer some sanctuary. But one resident, called Jamil, told us their campsite is now part of the battlefield. Look at all the shrapnel. You can count the holes. Come with me to the rear. I'll show you more. If they hit a child's head, do you think he'd survive? Jamil shares a tent with his extended family, and he told us he doesn't know what to do. We need a solution. We need some rations, because we'll either die from starvation or the bombing. These are distressing accounts from a conflict approaching its 100th day, a conflict that shows signs of escalating throughout the region. The war-torn nation of Yemen, the latest country of concern. The Americans have launched a second day of strikes on targets here, an attempt to deter Houthi militiamen from carrying out attacks on shipping. The Houthis, who are backed by Iran, say they're acting in support of the Palestinians. But the American president told reporters they'd sent a message to Iran. We're confident, we're prepared. Houthi leaders have vowed to continue attacking ships in the Red Sea. They've promised a strong and effective response. It seems a new front in the Middle East has opened. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is in Downing Street tonight. And John, we've had some more reaction tonight from the Prime Minister about those strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. What did he say?
Well, both the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, have been justifying the attacks that the UK took part in, along with the Americans, earlier in the week, Thursday evening. And pretty tough language, particularly from Lord Cameron, saying that the UK won't hesitate to strike again if there are more attacks on shipping by the Houthis in the Red Sea. First of all, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has given an interview to the Mail on Sunday in which he said this: I think the world is probably the most unstable it has been in decades. It is also more complex. He says, my job is to make sure the British people are safe. Can we afford to do these things? We can't afford not to, he says. Well, Lord Cameron goes further, warning about further attacks if the attacks on shipping continue. He is writing in the Sunday Telegraph, in which he says he's described it as nonsense, the Houthi contention. This is all about Israel and Gaza, because he says they've attacked ships from countries all over the world, heading to destinations right across the globe. And Lord Cameron reveals that he praises Rishi Sunak for approving the use of the first set of UK strikes. He said it followed a request from the United States to assist with what he called limited and targeted military action. And he said that the joint action would have gone some way to degrade Houthi capabilities built up with Iranian backing. He talks about targeting sites from which we know the attacks came, where we'll have to assess the impact. And Lord Cameron says that he says, we've sent an unambiguous message. What the Houthis are doing is wrong. We're determined to put a step to it. We'll work with our allies. We'll always defend the freedom of navigation. And then he says, and crucially, we'll be prepared to back words with actions. Well, of course, the government's come under some criticism, not least from the Speaker of the House of Commons, for not informing Parliament before all this was going on, or recalling the House of Commons on Friday. But the Prime Minister has said that he will make a full statement and take questions from MPs as soon as MPs return to the House of Commons after the weekend. Bound to face lots of questions. Worth mentioning, though, that the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, writing in The Independent on Sunday, has given the government his backing for these strikes by the UK and the Americans.
Yeah. John Craig with the latest there in Downing Street. John, thank you. And the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, will be on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips from 8:30 tomorrow morning. We'll also be hearing from Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Now, the streets of central London once again filled with tens of thousands of protesters today, marching in support of Palestinians as part of a global day of action. They were met with a heavy police presence, but officers made only 9 arrests, 3 of which were on suspicion of inciting racial hatred. Sky's crime correspondent Martin Brunt has our report.
This was the 7th major pro-Palestine march through London. Many had demonstrated before, but one new protester, Little Amal, a giant puppet of a young Syrian refugee. In Arabic, Amal means hope. She represents all displaced children. Again, marchers called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
People coming out every weekend saying a basic thing, just cease fire.
Many celebrated this week's charge of genocide brought by South Africa against Israel at the International Court of Justice.
I don't think that would have happened without all the awareness that has been going on through these demonstrations. So I think it's very important.
Israel does need to be able to defend itself. No question about that. But there's also no question about the length to which the Israeli army is going.
Israel insists the genocide charge is false and grossly distorted. It's fighting Hamas, it says, not the Palestinian people. The UK's bombing of the Houthi rebels in Yemen for their attacks on Red Sea ships was condemned by some protesters.
Our government is choosing to value shipping containers over civilian lives is incredibly emblematic of what our government values.
1,700 police officers, the Met, with support from many other UK forces, shadowed the marchers. There were arrests for alleged support of a banned organisation and carrying offensive banners, but there was no significant disorder. The officer in charge said other suspects could be arrested later.
Sometimes what we will end up doing is dealing with investigations after the event when people have taken pictures of something that might be anti-Semitic or be inciting a hate crime, and then we'll investigate it retrospectively.
The organisers say these marches are going to continue, so whatever the drain on your resources, you're going to have to live with them.
And we will do the very best we can with the resources we have. This is a cost to communities, in the officers that would ordinarily be working in local communities will be in central London dealing with these major marches.
The London March was part of a global day of pro-Palestine action involving 30 countries. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
There are calls for top post office executives to be forced to hand back their bonuses. It's also claimed the post office wrongly applied for tax relief for compensation payments it made to sub-postmasters caught up in the Horizon IT scandal. And one victim, who was jailed, has told Sky News that things became even worse once he was freed. Sky's North of England correspondent Shingi Mararike reports.
Now at the time it was all over the media. It's like a life-changing opportunity.
Arfan Aslam can remember the pride that came with becoming a sub-postmaster. Pride that turned into more than 20 years of pain after he was arrested and imprisoned, caught up in the Horizon scandal.
They've took me out handcuffed, walked out, marched me out my own post office in front of these people, making me look like a criminal and a thief. You know what I mean? I let my mum and dad down and everything. It broke my heart.
His sentence was 18 months, but even after his release, Arfan still felt trapped, forced to repay more than £53,000 to the post office.
Once I come out of prison, it was even harder, because then I've got loads of debt on my kid. I've got loads of debt. No one wanted to know me. I've got nowhere to live. No one even look at you. You know what I mean? I've got loads of debt. After prison, I had a very, very, very hard time in my life.
Today came news that will make people like him even angrier. Experts say the post office claimed a tax break on compensation payments, which is why they're calling for the bonuses given to management to be returned.
Actually, they had a huge tax black hole in their accounts, which they failed to disclose for years, which they smuggle out in very, very elliptical disclosure in this year's accounts. And their own remuneration policy says that in such circumstances, bonuses should be clawed back. Well, they should be thinking about that.
The post office says the information on taxation from its annual report and accounts is appropriate and accurate, with the tax treatment of the funding it receives from government to pay compensation treated in the same way as the other funding it receives. Arfan is now pursuing compensation, and he also wants his conviction overturned, because for a man who saw his family name tarred, you can't put a price on the stigma and shame.
Well, any bit of money would help, but it cannot take away the pain and the 22 years of the suffering, sir. It cannot.
Shingi Marike, Sky News, Manchester.
Measles cases are rising fast in England and Wales. That's according to the UK Health Security Agency, which says the biggest surges are in the West Midlands and in London. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports now from Birmingham Hospital.
Measles is back, and the West Midlands is at the centre of the surge. Cases are at their highest since the mid-1990s, as vaccination rates in parts of Birmingham and the Black Country have slumped to amongst the lowest in the country. At Scallywag's Soft Play Centre, these parents have made sure their kids are protected.
It's one of those illnesses, really, where you've always heard of it in the background over the many years, but I suppose it's one of those things of where I suppose you don't really think of it sort of to be going round, do you? It's just one of those things that sort of you think of back in the day, you could say.
And now back?
Well, apparently.
So many anti-vaccination people around nowadays, so I think it's just going to keep getting worse the more people say no to getting their kids vaccinated.
People are just scared, they don't know what to do for the best, but at least I know that I've done what I can for my children, and I do think it's important for people to consider having them done to reduce the numbers.
Latest figures from the UK Health Security Agency show there were more than 1,600 cases of suspected measles reported in England and Wales last year. That compares to 735 in 2022 and 360 the year before. Almost half the current surge is in just 2 regions. Of the 217 suspected cases reported in the last 4 weeks of the year, 57 were in the West Midlands and 44 were in London. In the last month, more than 50 children have needed treatment for measles at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. Doctors here say they haven't seen anything like it in many years. To stop the virus spreading, 95% of children need to be vaccinated with the MMR jab. But NHS figures show that last year, only 85% had 2 doses by the age of 5. That's the lowest rate since 2010, when Andrew Wakefield was struck off the medical register for falsely claiming the jab caused autism.
There are a number of reasons why that is the case. Clearly, during the pandemic, there was a pause, and a number of people may have not had their MMR vaccination. And there are also some parts of communities where they may have some reservations, some hesitancy about having a vaccination, and particularly in Muslim communities where they may have concerns over the vaccine, which can contain pork products.
Measles can cause permanent disability and even death, and doctors are urging parents to make sure their children are protected as the virus spreads. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Birmingham.
Almost 18 months after the death of Queen Elizabeth, today we learned more details about her final moments. The newly seen documents include a memo which states that Her Majesty simply slipped away without any pain. Sabah Chowdhury has the details.
This was the last time the world saw Queen Elizabeth. Frail, walking stick in hand, but still hard at work, aged 96, and welcoming new Prime Minister Liz Truss at her home in Balmoral. It was here she took her last breath, and now a new book by royal biographer Robert Hardman makes public the family's private moments. The book features a memo written by the Queen's private secretary, Sir Edward Young. It says, very peaceful, in her sleep, slipped away, old age, death has to be registered in Scotland, agree 3:10 p.m. She wouldn't have been aware of anything, no pain.
To know that she died peacefully, in no pain, is satisfying, it's pleasing, because all the while, certainly since the passing of Prince Philip in April 2021, she had been suffering mobility issues, she had been in pain, but right at the end, she wasn't. That's good news.
Until the Queen's last moments, duty came first. It's reported even after her death, in a red box, she left some notes, her recommendations for the Order of Merlin, and 2 private letters.
She was working right up to the end. As far as those letters are concerned, I would have thought very, very personal to Sir Edward Young, presumably thanking him for his unstinting service, and maybe a little bit of advice to her son, who was about to take over and who obviously did take over. But they would have been very personal letters, and I doubt we'll see the light of day, certainly not in my lifetime.
One of the recipients of those letters is now the custodian of this palace. King Charles was picking mushrooms when, shortly afterwards, he received a phone call from an aide addressing him as Your Majesty. And that's when the penny dropped. And so the new king set to work. It's reported he went to his mother's bedside, said his farewells, and then prepared to break the news to the new heir to the throne.
These plans have been in place for a long time. And I think we can see that detailed in this memo here. You know, we know that the plans have been going on for an exceedingly long time, and they played out in the way that the royal household staff and Queen Elizabeth II would have wanted.
Poignant personal moments shared for the first time. And now, details of a farewell forever memorialised for years to come. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News.
And let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News and Matt.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Right, Alex Calvin, we've got AFCON around the corner, so thought we'd test out your knowledge with a little African player quiz, all about the Premier League. Alex with a slightly fresher trim today than Calvin. So you already 1-0 up. No, look at mine, mine's worse.
You're in it as well, man.
So we'll start off with games played. Just tell me if you could just read out the names. Actually, one of you that we got there.
Sholem Yobi, Wilfred Zaha, Kolo Toure, and Cheick Kouyaté.
So who do you think's got the most games played out of them four? Let's start with you, Calvin. Go on.
Zaha for me.
You're going Zaha,
Yeah.
Calvin, Alex.
I'm gonna go Kolo.
All right. Reveal.
Come on, knowledge.
So we got we've got yellow cards. So we've got Cheick Kouyaté, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Wolf Zaha, and El Hadj Diouf.
Attacking players, because these three are attacking players.
It's hard.
I'm gonna go Tiote.
Okay.
Because he was a defensive
Yeah,
midfielder.
made a
And
lot
he's
of
someone
tackles.
that, yeah. So I'm gonna go Tiote.
Karen.
I think it could shock us, you know.
Bro, something's telling me because look, there's referees in each picture. There's no referee there. I'm trying to look at it like that. Yeah, I'm trying to look at it like that.
I'm gonna say Diouf.
Have a look.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. What? I told you, trick question. Look at you going into
No
detail.
trick questions.
What?
Right, so
I think he'll be a defensive midfielder, but
Tuno. Goals.
Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, Didier Drogba, Emmanuel Adebayo.
Okay, legend there, Premier League legends, top goal scorers. What do we reckon?
Salah.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be more.
Yeah,
Excellent finish.
More Salah. Yeah, more Salah to be fair.
Yeah, both going Mo Salah?
Yeah.
There you go, right, 2-2, okay. So we've got assists here. So let me know who we got.
Mohamed Salah, Riyad Mahrez, Didier Drogba, Sadio Mane.
I'm gonna go Salah again, you know.
Yeah?
I'm gonna go Salah again.
Calvin, what you saying?
Because his stats are outrageous.
Yeah.
But then Riyad,
I'm going Riyad Mahrez.
Have a look.
I knew it. Bro, his stats are outrageous. Lucas Radebe, Joseph Yobo, Lauren Kolo Toure.
Okay, so what are we thinking? These are clean sheets in the Premier League.
Clean sheets.
Kolo Toure. Invincibles. Invincibles.
Man.
That has to be. I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked. Has to be.
Nah, I'll be fuming.
Yeah, has to be.
That was a clean one.
He's a legend. He's a legend.
Yobo. What? How much of a legend is he? Yobo.
Like probably one of the best defenders in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Do you think sometimes players like that can get a little bit forgotten as well? Just like obviously you guys have played for Nigeria, you go back there, so you know like the kind of legendary names.
It depends on their status, but he will never be forgotten.
And was sent off. Is that red card? The most red cards.
Yeah. So this is most red cards. So yeah, Stephen Pilar, Malumbu, Victor Wanyama, and Sadio Mane.
For me, these two, because they're midfielders defensively, surely.
Yeah, surely. Do you know what I mean? Wanyama for me.
So you, Calvin Wanyama?
I'm going Malumbu.
All right, let's have a look.
I knew it.
Well, it's joint, so that's half a point.
Surely that's half a point.
Yeah,
You didn't say.
It doesn't matter. Half a point. Wait, how you don't get a full point? You must get both answers right.
Oh, it was only pick one.
Right, so this is Premier League titles.
Yaya Toure, Riyad Mahrez, and Kanu, and Quinton Fortune.
What are we thinking?
Premier League titles.
Premier League titles, yeah. What are you guys thinking then? Premier League titles.
Oh, it's a tough one. Even like these, because we're younger, like I don't know how many they've won. Let me think. I'm gonna go with. Yeah, I'm going Riyadh.
Have a look.
Yeah.
How many was it?
5.
5.
So 5 was the one at Leicester, and then 4 at City. Yaya with 3, Kanu with 2, Quinton Fortune with 1. I think that the win there goes to Alex, I think, yeah.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn and journalist and author Christina Patterson. Welcome both. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Observer. Their headline, Red Sea Crisis Could Shatter Economic Recovery Hopes. We'll be right back.
Independent United Kingdom.
These last few years have seen some huge stories. And these stories have been driven by politics, by politicians, the people in power.
You must stay at home.
And it's my job to figure out how these decisions made by politicians impact all of us in our everyday lives.
This is the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. People turn up here with their child stuff in a black sack and just say, don't want to. And that is what it is. It's first class poverty.
Is this an example of the welfare state failing?
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
These are stories that affect us all. Millions of children are now having to catch up. Some stories have changed all of our lives. Because like the residents, the staff are being infected. Politicians, they make decisions all of the time, and it's our job to hold them to account. I wonder if you will take this opportunity to apologise to those families. But in the end, the real power doesn't actually lie with the politicians. The real power lies with the people. I'm Nick Martin. I'm the People and Politics correspondent at Sky News.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, let's take a look at our top stories. Taiwan has elected a new president, securing a third straight term for the Democratic Progressive Party, which champions autonomy from China. President Biden has sent a private message to Iran following further U.S. strikes on Houthi rebels, who Tehran supports, in Yemen. And there are calls for top post office executives to be forced to hand back their bonuses following the Horizon scandal. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn and journalist and author Christina Patterson. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, the headline of the Sunday Telegraph, UK ready to strike Houthis again, says Cameron. A report on the Foreign Secretary's piece in the paper about the threat the conflict is causing to freedom of navigation. The risk to the economy posed by the crisis in the Red Sea is what The Observer is leading with. Their headline, Red Sea crisis could shatter economic recovery hopes. 100 days of hell. The Mirror's top story looks into the Middle East's grim milestone with a story about a premature baby clinging to life in a Gaza hospital. The Sunday Express is reporting on calls from MP Kevin Hollenrake to jail the post office chiefs who were behind the scandal that convicted innocent postmasters of fraud. The Sunday Times reports Theresa May's government knew about concerns over the Horizon IT system, but still pushed through a CBE for post office boss Paula Venables. The Mail on Sunday is leading on an exclusive with more details about the man involved in a revolt on a British Airways flight in November, who they report avoided deportation despite previous gun and drug convictions. And The Sun on Sunday has an exclusive on Lauren Goodman's former relationship with footballer Kyle Walker. The cold weather is the top story on The Star. The headline, brace yourself for the big freeze. See what they did there? And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And as I said, we're joined tonight by Andrew Eborn and Christina Patterson. Always wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, let's start with a grim front page and a grim milestone as well. Let's go to the Sunday Mirror. And it says Middle East's grim milestone, 100 days of hell, because Sunday marks, of course, the 100 days of the conflict. And, a picture there of a premature baby. And, of course, we have seen a huge loss of civilian, whatever the politics one might take behind it, a huge loss of civilian life. Christina, what did you make of the coverage? What do you make of the milestone?
Well, the milestone, the whole thing is just tragic. It's tragic from start to finish. And one of the many tragic aspects of this is we don't know how this will finish. Obviously, more than 23,000 Palestinians have been killed in this. The hostages, many of them still haven't been returned. Some of them have died. There seems to be no way out for this. And we know what's happening with South Africa and accusations of genocide, and we don't know what will happen there. But what is absolutely clear is that this is just a tragedy, and it's a tragedy that will have global implications for a very long time to come, because whatever Israel does and doesn't manage to succeed in doing in relation to Hamas, what is absolutely clear is that it certainly will not have killed the desire to obliterate Israel, which, unfortunately, one assumes that generations of terrorists will be born from this tragedy. So, in a way, there's almost nothing sensible to say about it. We just hope and pray that it will end.
Andrew?
Oh, and absolutely. And this is the problem. I think, in a way, we almost get desensitized to a lot of these things until you personify it by looking at this terrible tragedy. Power cuts, they're saying, about threatening the lives of the Gaza babies. This is probably the youngest victim, they say, in one of the last working medical facilities as a result of it. It's a horrible, grim milestone. And as you say, there's no end in sight. And this is the real problem.
I mean, you say desensitized, but actually we saw thousands and thousands of people out on the streets of London, Global Day of Protest. We're seeing these protests everywhere. And often it has to be said in conflicts, sometimes the attention of the public outside wanes, but here it doesn't seem to. I mean, you're still seeing people turn out.
Yes, I think you're right, and I think in particular many young people have been are extremely passionate about this. I think one of the tragedies of the situation, though, is that, who wouldn't be enraged by what is going on? It is absolutely right to be horrified by what happens in a war. And of course, questions certainly should be asked of Israel and are being asked about the strategy it's taking. And even David Cameron said at a select committee this week that he thought that Israel might well have committed war crimes. So, it's completely understandable that people would be angry. But when people demonstrate about the situation there, what they don't say is what you are meant to do when an enemy embeds themselves among civilians and uses human shields.
I suppose that's why so many people are focusing on sort of some kind of plan for when the violence ends, which, of course, hopefully will be soon. Now, let's go to the Telegraph, because, of course, one of the risks has always been, and one of the fears of the allies of Israel, is this escalating, becoming a regional conflict. So, front page of the Sunday Telegraph, UK ready to strike Houthis again, says Cameron. Andrew, what does he say exactly?
Well, basically saying they can defend their freedom of navigation, and the attacks on the Red Sea mean they have to go the very long way round to deliver, obviously, the oil and various other things as well, has a massive impact. And so this is, again, the language of war and the real concern about the escalation of that. And so that's what he's trying to do. He's sort of saying, well, there are people chanting on the streets, well, Yemen, make us proud. And it's the language of hate. And I think what's happened in the poison that there's been in social media is spilled out onto the streets. And we saw this, I think, within the 24 hours of October the 7th. And what was happening on that sort of situation is there were about 50 million posts on social media about the conflict. A lot of it, some of it artificially intelligent creation, a bit of fake news as well as the reality.
Yeah, Christina, before I go to you, let me just pull up the front page of The Observer. The Red Sea crisis could shatter economic recovery hopes. So, sorry, front page of The Observer, there it is. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on the Red Sea and the freedom of navigation, because that could have impact. Obviously, this crisis is causing a lot of deaths, but there is an economic angle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not sure that people have really grasped the potential implications of this economically. There's talk that it could cause our GDP to shrink by 0.3%. And I've heard this week, as I'm sure many of us have, interviews with people who run businesses whose costs for shipping have quadrupled, quintupled, just become totally unaffordable. It means that our bills will yet again go up.
So in light of that, do you think that we're going to see, I don't know, the UK government, the US government maybe put even more pressure? Because they are obviously putting pressure on Israel behind the scenes. Do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I don't think I'm afraid I don't think the UK is in much position to put pressure on Israel, but I think Biden and Blinken will continue to, and we can only hope that somehow or other there will be some kind of de-escalation at some point. But what's not clear is the Houthis are saying this is all about Gaza. I mean, that they are attacking ships that are nothing to do with Israel or countries that support Israel. So I don't think their message is entirely coherent.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very complex region and everyone has lots of reasons, but certainly what's happening in the Palestinian territories in Gaza is, certainly the Middle East is glued to the images that we're seeing come out of Gaza. So it is an incendiary situation, to say the least. Let's look at some domestic news now. Front page of the Times. So this is about that CBE that was given to the head of the post office. So Venel's given CBE despite Horizon fears. Honours Committee under May government ignored the warnings and pushed through with the award straight away.
It's one of the biggest scandals and miscarriages of justice. And I was with Michael Rodkin just a few hours ago. He was the sub-postmaster who was invited in to look at Horizon system and discovered all sorts of things where they could alter the figures and so on and so forth. But it's shocking news. And every time that we're unveiling more and more about what actually happened. So what they're saying here is the Honours Committee under May government ignored the warnings that the system was defective and still pushed through the CBE for Venels. And I think the general public they're outraged about it. What's interesting, though, it took an ITV drama before that really came to light, and people have been dripping the story for a number of years on that sort of basis.
In fairness, I'll say this, that a lot of journalists did work on it. It sort of never captured the public imagination, because obviously the drama was built from the journalism. Christina, again, before I come to you, let's look at the Sunday Express, which has a different angle on the same story. So, Minister, jail post office bullies. I mean, again, from no action for so long now, there's a lot of calls for action.
Well, that's right. There is. Everybody, as Andrew says, following the drama, everybody wants to be shown to be the person who was right while everybody else was wrong. And an awful lot of people were wrong. But I do think what's interesting about this, Kevin Hollingrake is the Post Office Minister, and he's saying that some of the corporate people should go to jail. And certainly from what we know, it looks as if some of them should go to jail. I mean, obviously, there would have to be court cases, but I think there should be prosecutions. But what was interesting to me about the Sunday Times story about the pushing ahead under the May government of the CBE for Paula Venels is that actually it looks as if the politicians were actively encouraging both Her Honour and the Post Office to override objections about the Horizon system. So, in fact, it's worse than we think, because in that story, somebody who is not named essentially suggests that Paula Venel was rewarded for going against her conscience because the government wanted to cut costs, and they wanted the post office to keep costs low, i.e. not allow all these expensive claims to go ahead. So that is a pretty explosive allegation. And I do think politicians were not just complicit, but more malign than that.
Okay. I have to leave it there for now. Christina, Andrew, stay with us. We'll have more from the front pages, including this in the Sunday Times. Their headline, Beijing doesn't scare us, says the new leader of Taiwan. Stay with us.
Breakfast is becoming even brighter here on Sky News. There's a new studio, a new start time of 6 a.m. and some new faces.
OK, yes, we'll bring you all the top stories from around the globe.
And here in Westminster as we count down to an election.
Plus a look ahead to the stories that will be making headlines on Sky News throughout the day.
That's your new look breakfast show, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. here on Sky News.
Well, what happened was I had the nuts in the box and the nuts was disappearing, first of all. So I thought, where's these nuts going? So I went into my cupboard I got out in the shed and went into the bottom drawer there. And in there I got an old pair of shoes and it was full of nuts. So the mouse had taken them from the box and put them in the old shoes. So I thought, that's a bit odd, that. So the next thing happened was that I had the nuts in there, and then I went in the next morning and there was some items put in the box. So I thought I'm going to set up a night camera, a trail camera, and that's what I done. And this is what I captured, as you can see what's on there now. The mouse was putting all the items, well, most of them, into the box on top of the nuts.
You couldn't believe what you were seeing, because the mouse is doing this in pitch black and is very meticulous at tidying.
That's what I mean, yeah. It's because this is infrared film, so it's not light like this, obviously. It's pitch black. Putting that stick on there is amazing, yeah.
So since you've recorded this, have you been leaving things out for the mouse to tidy up, hoping it will come back? What's been happening since?
Well, it comes back every night. It's probably out there now.
Please tell me you leave out a little treat for doing all this hard work for you. No. You're quite messy, Rodney.
No, not yet, I haven't.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, our barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn and journalist and author Christina Patterson. Thanks for being with us. Okay, let's go to the front page of the Sunday Times. This time, let's focus on one of their main stories. Zelensky's plea to the West, help us now, for the sake of all of our futures. And this is, of course, the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, I guess in a way reminding the West that there's a war still going on, that he is fighting. And I suppose he's a bit scared about election year, especially in the US. Christina, what did you make of what was said here?
Well, and it's another tragic situation, I'm afraid to say. I mean, Rishi Sunak has just been out there and given 2.5 billion to contribute to Zelensky's war effort. I don't think any of us would begrudge that, but it is strange how he can find money for war when he tells us there is no money for so many other things. But this is a fight against tyranny, really, because obviously Putin has invaded another country, and it is desperately bad luck for Zelensky that the Gaza situation has exploded in the way it has, because the eyes of the world are now on that rather than on Ukraine. And of course, the situation, as you said or suggested, in the US is pretty awful. Biden did not get the funding he wanted to give to Ukraine, which is enormously hindering Ukraine. And Ukraine will not win this war. I mean, it's a proxy war. It is sending its own people. It will not win it if it doesn't get the financial help from the West and the weapons. The Ukrainians are being incredibly brave, and many are dying and being injured and wounded and losing homes and livelihoods and so much else in the course of this war. But without Western support, it won't win.
And that's the real problem, isn't it? Because what does victory look like? He's talking about you've got to keep on going, keep on throwing more and more money at it. And as you rightly say, where is this 2.5 billion coming from? And I know they all sort of said they're going to be there till the very end, and they've all signed the flag. I think all the cabinet signed the flag as a sort of an interesting gesture. But when they're talking about victory, it's incredibly difficult to look at that in reality.
Sure, but I suppose it could be victory as in the West standing together behind Ukraine and sending that message to Putin. I mean, maybe some Ukrainian territory will eventually just become Russian, depending on how much. But I guess that would be victory, certainly for Zelensky, but potentially for the European.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's what we need to look at, is what does a victory look like? Because winning the war, I think, is an ambition which I think is probably too difficult to achieve. I think trying to get people to the negotiating table to say, OK, let's work out how we stop this would be a more realistic approach.
Yeah. OK, let's go again to another domestic story, which is the Express, page 2. Pupils can't learn to read on screen. Thousands of children would be left unable to write and spell if schools do not cut down on routine screen use in lessons. Christina, what do you think of this?
Yeah, well, this doesn't seem to be an incredibly explosively new finding. An education expert who's presumably sent a press release to Sunday Express is being quoted for her views on pupils using screens and how that might hinder their literacy and exam skills. And I think there is nobody on this planet who would deny that that might be the case. But, on the other hand, what you gain in terms of incredible skills for young, very small children on, maybe they won't use handwriting in the way that we did. Skills change over time.
I confess my handwriting is terrible.
Mine is as well. Mine is terrible.
I only notice when I'm writing Christmas cards.
I know, exactly.
And it's true, use it or lose it is what they say.
Well.
And you work on that basis. And I think the problem is that if you're doing things on screen, and they've also announced that next year they're going to start doing GCSEs on screen, so you won't necessarily need to do that for certain pupils and so on and so forth. But if you have instant spelling checks and so on and so forth, you're going to have issues there.
I have to say, though, my little boy uses a screen for spelling, and actually that's quite useful because it gives him, it tells him if it's the wrong answer. So, but yes, certainly for writing, it hasn't helped any of us, has it?
Oracy, I think, is the skill that they're going to bring in for people. And because with AI basically enabling people to do first drafts of virtually anything, the way to really test people is to say, OK, stand up in front of the class and talk to us about it.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
How's your son on that front?
He's very little. He's only 7, so I think, we have time. Let's go to the Mail on the Sunday, front page. And the beautiful picture of the Queen and, then Prince Charles, but obviously King Charles now. A royal exclusive secret summits over making Charles regent in Queen's last years. And it's about these revelations from this book that, some revelations have come out already, especially about the Queen's final moments, which we're told peaceful.
Well, I was very pleased. I mean, death is no picnic. And, many of us have lost family members in situations that have not been entirely peaceful. So I'm very pleased to hear that the Queen died peacefully in her sleep. Yeah. And it's very touching also to hear that she was doing her red boxes really right up to when she died. She was an incredibly diligent person.
Andrew, we've got 30 seconds, but I know you've got stuff to say.
Well, I think the poor old Charles saying that he was out picking mushrooms, what a fun guy. I think you work on that sort of basis. I feel a bit sad for him that was the revelation, because he was at his mother's side right to the end. I think it felt a bit intrusive from my point of view.
True, I can see that. Andrew, Christina, for now, thank you, but we will see you in the next hour. Thank you so much for having gone through the papers with us. Now let's take a quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
A developing Arctic flow will make it cold through the next week, with snow for some and a risk of ice. There'll be a frosty start for many tomorrow, with freezing fog patches over some central parts and wintry showers near northern coasts. Now expect some icy stretches there. Southern parts look quite cloudy through the morning, with a little patchy rain, especially near western coasts, but there will be some sunshine too. Elsewhere, inland areas will be mostly dry with sunny spells, although fog will take time to clear. But expect wintry showers over northern coastal counties. Northern Scotland will see snow at low levels.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, a terse response from Beijing after Taiwan re-elects its governing party, which champions autonomy from China.